Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza, with life coach Tommy. What do we have for today, Tommy?
Just wanted to. There was a question last week last time that we were on here that I wanted to address. Somebody said, "What if you're just born this way?" So I want to talk about that, but also I want to talk about self-empowerment. What that means. It's usually a vague term that a lot of motivational speakers and life coaches and people who write self-help books, they'll use it, self-empowerment, and on the surface it seems self-explanatory. But I really want to dig into what it actually means when it comes to taking responsibility for one's actions and what they do.
Great. And for those of you that are joining us, please share this on your page so that other people can join in. And if you have any questions about the term born this way, or have some questions about self-empowerment, send your questions in and we'll answer them live here on the show. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I basically want to address the question, because we kind of briefly discussed it last time, the whole idea, what if I'm just born this way? Okay. And it's a nice blend into self-empowerment, but the easy answer is no one is born one way. That's the easy answer. We have all sorts of genetic structures, to use like a computer term, ones and zeros, pins and whistles, that we can access. We just don't know it. That's genetics alone. But there are also external factors, psychological factors. There's all sorts of stuff. You're a huge wavelength, and people don't realize that. And what we're conflicting against is a survival instinct to simplify everything.
But okay, so born this way. So we're talking, for instance, I'll use myself as an example for you guys. We're talking, I was born Latino. I know I was born gay. Those are kind of the basics. Like, I don't know that I was born with not a huge financial security. I don't know that I was born into a family that wasn't very educated. That's not what we're talking about.
Right. That is not. We're not talking about the things that we literally have no control over. There's things that we can control, and there's things we can't control. You can't control your height. You can't control your body structure, as far as your skeletal structure. Those are basic things you can't control. Things you can control is your attitude, your viewpoint, the way you treat others, your weight. You can control. To a certain extent, unless you have some sort of disability. So there's those types of things. Okay. And so when somebody wakes up and they think one day, we can give a harsh example of, let's say somebody chooses to be abusive towards their partner. That's a choice that they're making. They can't tell their friends, well, that's just the way I am. Because that, again, is giving up on making any sort of effort to improve oneself. Okay. And so that's kind of that is what I'm talking about, is the things that you can control. You're not born one specific way in that realm.
So choosing to be antisocial, mm-hmm. choosing to be, for lack of a better, an ass towards people, mm-hmm. Overly picky about things. Those are things that we have control over. Right. But if we're talking, for instance, if I develop agoraphobia, that's different.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
Because agoraphobia, excuse me, is a clinical, situation. If we're talking like deep, phobia on a psychiatric level, that's sort of, if we want to get really deep on a psychological level, that's in this gray area where on the surface, absolutely, you don't have any control over the phobia because it's clinical. However, if you can recognize your agoraphobia and you can seek psychiatric help, then you can control that. Okay. Because there's medicine for that you can do. And, a therapist or a psychiatrist will first see, what sort of internal mechanisms are happening. Is it psychological? Is it clinical? Once you've worked with your therapist or worked with your psychiatrist on figuring out, is it clinical or is it psychological? Because most times it's psychological, and that can be easily fixed with therapy.
Got it.
But even that is someone, if somebody wakes up and say, oh, I can't go outside because I'm agoraphobic, that is still lending control to something that you can control.
Because I use that term because I was recently, just at the end of last year, diagnosed. Yet I had a trouble understanding it because I'm like, well, I'm able to get outside. I'm able to, and they're like, well, you choose, and that maybe this is where we'll connect this. I choose to go out because I can't just stay in my apartment all the time. Now, how I choose to act once I'm outside, is that more what we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
In a way. But I mean, if we want to go really deep and talk about your agoraphobia, as it pertains to how complex and how big of a wavelength we really are, if you are diagnosed agoraphobic, right, and you wake up and you make a choice, I have to go outside, you are conquering your agoraphobia psychologically.
Okay.
You don't need clinical assistance because you're able to attack it. Because agoraphobia on a clinical level prevents you from stepping outside or going outside and being and experiencing this disabling, uncomfortable, situation. But you're able to, just the action of you putting one foot in front of the other, getting into your car and coming out into the agora is Greek for marketplace. So I'll say coming out into the marketplace.
Yeah.
Then that speaks volumes of the choice that you're making, and that choice can conquer any, in my opinion, in my professional opinion as a life coach, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but in my professional opinion as a life coach and motivational speaker is that there are so many things on a psychological level that can be conquered by choice.
Okay.
People need guidance, however, to get to that point, to make that choice.
Okay. So then, bringing this back to Born This Way, what are some of the common reasons people use? Can we call it an excuse?
Well, there are a lot of things that are excuses. There are a lot of things. And some people just haven't been taught, and a lot of times people are raised that way or raised to think that way. While I don't want to disparage anyone's career choice, there are certain blue-collar workers who don't aspire to anything. They could, some blue-collar workers have the potential for executive level work, but because they were raised to think that all they will amount up to is blue-collar work, they won't make that choice to pursue white-collar work. Okay. And so they are making an excuse saying, I will never live up to that. I don't have the potential for that. Even though they've never tried, they will make that excuse and completely limit themselves to their fullest potential. Okay.
So for everybody who's joining us now, this is Put It Together Conversations. I'm Daniel G. Garza and Life Coach Tommy. We've seen him before. We are talking about the term or the line I mentioned as an excuse, Born This Way. Hello, Canada.
Hey, Canada.
So we are born this way, and how we use it to limit ourselves.
Yes.
And differentiating things that you're actually born with versus things or limitations that you pose on yourself in order to not adjust,
right,
change,
and
improve.
And in my sessions with my clients, I will ask them questions. If a client, for example, the gentleman who said what if I'm born this way on our last session? Oh wow! Oh hey, that's my fraternity brother.
Oh.
He was a Houstonian and now he lives in France.
Hello, Houston.
Thanks for joining, Adam. Good to see you. So if I have a client and they say, what if I'm just born this way? I will ask them a question. I will guide them through using the Socratic method of just asking questions, saying, well, why do you think you're born this way? And then that'll say something. I'll hear a bunch of excuses, and so I'll pinpoint each excuse. It's like, okay, well, what makes you feel that way? Or why do you think that, so you're, like, let's say example, why do you think that you're born this way? And they say, well, it's just the way I was raised. I will ask, I was like, okay, well, is it possible to be aware of how you're raised and make different choices. And so I'll ask them questions. And the reason I bring that up is that without the assistance of a life coach, what somebody can do is ask themselves a question. When they say, I'm just born this way, they can ask themselves, like, is that true? You know, am I really, to use the harsh example of somebody who abuses their partner, am I really an abusive person? Is that who I am? Could I be different? And then that question starts spinning their gears and hopefully should help them adjust to a different way of thinking.
So for those of you again, and hello everybody who's joined us from another country.
Yeah, two people.
Yeah, thank you. Please share this. We're talking today about the term born this way and where you can actually make a difference, or the things that you can actually make a change for yourself. And again, let's use me as an example. Let's pretend that we have an example to show them. When I went into rehab, my first sponsor would ask me, why do you drink and do drugs? And for a long time, for the time I was there, I would say, oh, because I'm Hispanic, and you know, in our culture we drink, and and he was like, but you weren't born knowing you were Hispanic. You weren't born knowing that was your culture. And I was like, okay, damn you. And then I was like, well, because I'm gay and the gay culture, and we hang out at bars. And he was like, but you weren't born knowing what gay was and knowing that was where you hung out. I'm like, damn it, okay. And then I would blame it on health issues because I was depressed and what comes that. And everything I said, he would knock down. Yeah. He would not accept it as a valid excuse until one of my rehab brothers told me, you were just born an addict. You have a tendency to be an addict. Accept it. And the moment I went to him and shared that, I'm like, well, I'm just an addict. He was like, well, that's it. Now we can confront the actual issue. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's one thing, is that, you know, there are people, myself included, that have the addictive gene. You know, my parents and those who didn't know this or didn't learn this on other sessions, my mom was a coke addict and my father was an alcoholic. So I have the addictive gene. But I'm aware that that's there, and I have certain healthy addictions now because I'm a bodybuilder and I eat healthy, and I'm obsessed with that. And I will say I'm a video game addict, but that's why you don't see a console in my home. I would lose 8 hours of my life if I ever had a video game console. But I'm aware of it. And so because I have that self-awareness, and you're probably in the same situation because you have that self-awareness, you can confront that issue, that thing that you're born with that is affecting your life. Because that's one thing that we are born with. We are either addictive or we don't have that addictive gene. And the important thing is just to make the choice to be aware of it and realign the focus, realign the addiction. You know, if your addiction is chocolate, that's okay. Chocolate is healthy. I mean, it can be healthy, but not in high volumes.
Right.
So once you go for the third peanut butter cup, you know, it's like, that's when you should be aware. It's like, okay, is this third peanut butter cup going to help me? Is it going to put more weight on me? Or am I going for it because of an emotional thing? You know, it's just having this consistent conversation with oneself to encounter this idea that, you know, we have these things in us.
Are you saying I was born sexy? That's
absolutely, Giovanni. You were born sexy.
Gio, yes, it's a friend of mine from Laguna Beach. Yes, Gio, you are sexy. I feel like we should have Lady Gaga, which is now Born This Way, singing in the background at this moment.
Next week we can.
Yeah, we'll have musical guest stars. Okay, so let's take it so that people can understand. Let's see. Chris Pettit says, I think addiction is learned. We weren't born addicts. Now I am a weird dude. I was born that way. Well, okay.
Is Chris, is he the one that asked the question last week? I feel like Chris might have been.
Yeah, I believe Chris did join us the last time we were on the air. So, so let's take this from the beginning. John X.
I do want to address what he said, but
go ahead.
After you were saying.
So John X comes to you and says, "I need some life coaching." Basically, I don't know how people would ask him, but
that's usually how it goes.
I need some coaching. Can you life coach me?
I need some help, something like that. Yeah.
you're talking in the session and you pinpoint a couple of aspects in his life, and for the sake of the conversation, let's say he does have anger management problems. Mm-hmm. Do you then first identify what he's mad about or why he's always mad?
Yes and no. Yes is the easy answer, but I want to elaborate on that and basically to kind of take a step back. When I go into my life coaching sessions, I make sure that they understand that my focus as a life coach is not on the past. I differentiate the difference between a therapist and a life coach up front, just so we manage expectations. And I tell them that I'm not a licensed therapist. What a licensed therapist is there for is to help an individual, for the most part, cope with their past. That's what, and build a positive future. That's what a therapist's role is. A life coach is to build upon the present and use what's ever happening in the present to build on the future. So my focus is to help them be more focused on the present. We have a...
Yeah. My mother never drank or used, but was petrified of liquor. My uncles were alcoholics. Do you believe mother was alcoholic in mind?
It's an interesting question. She was petrified of liquor. Well, my question is, was she petrified? And I always avoid talking about other people unless they're in the room because it's better to have that conversation with your mother to really understand her. But based only on your question, was she petrified of liquor because your uncles were alcoholic? I guess those were her brothers. Because if it was an external reaction to her brothers being alcoholic, then she wasn't really alcoholic in mind. She was just had a fear of becoming an alcoholic. Would be my response to that.
Which is what happens to a lot of children or younger siblings. You watch them go through certain aspects, so you avoid that totally, just to not put yourself in the situation per se.
Yeah. And a disclaimer is that my response is based only on what you've told me. It would be better if your mother was in the room and I could ask her questions. And I hope that answered your question.
So. Just so for everybody joining us, we're talking about the term "born this way," and Life Coach Tommy is talking to us about it.
I agree with that.
Yes, Chris. So we have John X coming in, and we're not going to address his past.
Right.
It's how it's affecting him now.
Right. So I'm not to answer one aspect. I don't assess if they've had past management or past anger management issues. I focus on who they are today. Are they suffering from anger management issues right now, here and today? And if so, why? And then pretty much life coaching is like being a detective. It's like you have to really ask a bunch of smart questions to uncover. And it's not just for me, it's for them too. That's why I ask questions, because the answers are inside them and I'm pulling it out of them. And it's usually why when I'll simplify it to give the example of, I had a client the other day say, I just don't have time to work out. And then basically that's a trigger for me as a life coach. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to help this guy find time because everyone has time. They just don't know it. And so like a detective, I would uncover their schedule. And then I would say, well, do you think you could create 30 minutes right there in the morning? Instead, what do you do in the morning? It's like, well, I don't really get up that early. It's like, could you wake up early? I was like, I could wake up at 7, but then I'd have to go to bed early, And so then we just have this conversation where I help them realize that they have an extra 30 minutes to an hour in the morning to work out. They just don't want to, they just don't want to make that effort. So
you just sound like my dad. I'm just gonna put that out there. You just sound a total like my dad. Like, let's find you. So you're bored. Let's see why you're bored.
So to answer your anger management issue is that basically in a session, I figure out what's happening. I ask the questions. I'm like a detective, unpeeling, not only for us, because it's a relationship that we're having, but I'm doing it for them. My stake is only, I have their interests in mind. That's it. I want, as I mentioned on last session, my goal is to get them on their side. And that's my whole role as a life coach. I have no personal stake in their life other than helping them become the best version of themselves. And so I will ask them the questions and we'll rip off each layer, each
onion.
Exactly, the onion example. And then what happens, because I'm asking all these questions, they're actually suddenly, and it gives me goosebumps because I'm so passionate about this, the aha moment they have. It's like, oh, shit, I do have time. Or, oh, shit,
Pardon me.
there's no reason for me to be so angry. Or there are other ways that I can express my anger. I can go to the gym. I can go for a run.
I think you just made a good, and again, for everybody watching us, thank you for joining us here on Put It Together Conversations.
I don't know if you're talking to me or you.
I'm going to say you because I'm just going to repeating stuff. I'm just the host. He's the specialist. For those of you listening, please feel free to share this on your page so that other people can join us in the conversation. We're talking about the term born this way and how it really affects our lives and what we can do to not use that as an excuse or as a label to carry us through life. So, like Coach Tommy was saying,
they're talking to each other.
Okay, so now this is what this show's about. We reconnect people from other lifetimes. So the first part would be, again, we're taking John X coming in and saying, I need life coaching because I have anger management problems and it's holding me back from life, relationships, etc.
Right.
So the first step would be asking the questions about why the anger management, how it's holding him back, and also what he's doing about it presently, correct?
Yeah.
And then as you peel off the ever onion, we start to discover things together. So John X and you are discovering, because there might be things that he didn't know that were already there.
Absolutely.
Or situations that have made him angry. So for instance, and I'm just going to take this because I talked to somebody recently, take for instance a veteran who's come back from the war. I feel like I've given all my time and served, and I come back and I'm not given the services that I now need. That could be a layer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because then yeah, I mean, we can dig into that. Thanks, Adam. I'm trying to get rid of it, but yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. But yeah, it is about the layers. It is about the relationship that we're building, and really, I just kind of as a side, I wanted to also note that sometimes if we're dealing with deep issues like anger management, there's only so much I can do. So sometimes I will actually recommend that they see a therapist. So I will stop the session and I was like, okay, thank you for sharing that. And obviously I pass no judgment. I was like, thank you for sharing that. But what I need to remind you of is that I'm not a therapist, and this is an issue that a licensed therapist will need to deal with.
So it would be safe to make a disclaimer in saying that we're not changing our life, we're adjusting our lives. I mean, that's basically what you're helping people do, because you can't change everything about my life, but you can help me make the best choices.
Yeah.
It's a group effort. Not only would it be good to have a life coach, but a therapist, a support group, something that'll help you make the changes necessary.
Yeah,
correct?
Absolutely. And again, and even to dig deeper, is that my dream as a life coach, when I'm working with a client, is to get them a support system. And also, again, as a note, is that I tell people up front, it's like, I'm not a 2-year life coach. I don't want to be your life coach in 2 years.
Got it.
My goal is to, in at least 90 days. Some people take longer, some people take shorter. I had a recent client, we had to break up. We broke up with each other because I was done. There was nothing more that I could do. She was finally, what she came to me for, she was able to find. I was able to give her tools and resources. She gave me a glowing review on Yelp. It was amazing. But it was pretty much in the middle of the session. It was like, I don't know what more we should take care of. I think you're good. And so we kind of set ways, and their tears were shed and all this stuff. But my goal is to help develop a support system, whether it be a therapist, a husband, a girlfriend, because what I was able to do is help her enhance her relationship with her husband, because that was the biggest thing, is that there were these communication issues she was having with her husband and her in-laws. And once I got her through that, she was able to pretty much stand up for herself when she needed to and communicate to her husband instead of communicating to me. Because a lot of times she was coming to me and expressing all this stuff to me, and I would let her talk, I would listen, and then I would end, when she was done, I was like, okay, are you done? Now, have you told your husband any of this? And she would say, no, I haven't. And then we would say, well, why haven't you? And then I would show her that there were things that she was holding back on her husband, and it was hurting her relationship. So that was the sort of thing that I was doing. And again, my goal is to give them the tools and the resources so that they can practice and utilize all this stuff on their own. Now, I have had on-again, off-again relationships for 2 years with clients, but it's always something different. Like, there's...
So what's one of the most common reasons why somebody would come to you?
The biggest thing is career. And that's the biggest thing I've gotten recently is a lot of people want to talk about their career and relationships. Those are the two biggest things, career and relationships. And there are really 6 pillars that we focus on of their life. And it's basically career, their social life, their health, their family life, their love life, and the relationship they have with their self.
So for everybody, I know we've got some more people joining us. Thank you for coming on. This is Put It Together Conversations. I am host Daniel Garza with Life Coach Tommy. We are talking today about the term "born this way." When it's used in the negative context or used as an excuse to not advance or move forward in your life, whether it be professional or personal. As you just heard, some of the most common ways people will, I guess, cover themselves in this term or use it as a shield would be for professional advancement or personal relationships. We live here in Hollywood, where the industry is, especially Hollywood, and a lot of times we do feel like we're blocked. It's a culture where you depend on other people liking you or wanting you. So it can affect people's thinking, well, maybe I was just born to not be that. Yeah. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
And then they come to you and you basically teach them to ride their bike without the safety wheels.
Pretty much. Without my assistant, without their father's assistant or mother or whatever, or the training wheels.
The training wheels, there we go.
And they can just go on their own.
Thank you for joining us. I don't know, where are we at time?
We're at 1:37.
Okay.
But I wanted to address, Chris had a question, and I don't remember what the question was. If we can go back and look at his thing. Definitely agree, life coach. I should repeat a lot.
No, that's not.
Yeah. Here we go. Chris's question, it was more of a comment. So I think addiction is learned. We aren't born addicts. And then he said he's a weird dude, which I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes, he's a weird dude.
So here's the thing is that, again, it's funny because Chris said, what if I'm born this way? And now he's saying that we're not born addicts. So there is... this mentality is true in Hollywood, even for people outside the entertainment industry. Absolutely. All the stuff that, Brother Adam, all the stuff that a normal individual will handle or deal with in France or Canada or Houston, that is amplified here in Los Angeles by about 100%, even if you're not in the entertainment industry. Because one, some way, whether you're accounting or whether you're real estate, you're connected to the entertainment industry in some way or form. It's actually really hard not to be connected to the entertainment industry living here. But there are, I'm trying to think of anyone I know that might not be
That
connected.
might not be, yeah. If you're 1 degree away from being part of Hollywood here,
But yeah, to answer your question, absolutely. It's even for people outside the entertainment industry in Hollywood, because Los Angeles itself, and I've lived here now for almost a decade, and you've been here longer, it's a bubble. And it's like this weird nexus of just, and there's no way to really describe it. There's no label to put on it. It's just this weird thing. And I always say that it's a beautiful monster. Because, and give a personal example, and we'll go back to Chris's comment, but give a personal example. My cousin moved here a few years ago. He had no plan. He just wanted to be a musician, and he was going to go to Musicians Institute. And I said, this place is a beautiful monster. It is exhausting. That's why I have the gray hair. So, I told my cousin, I was like, you have to come here with a plan, because this place is a beautiful monster. It's beautiful in the sense that if you have a game plan and you have a goal, and it's why I haven't lost my mind. If you have a game plan and you have a goal, this city will reward you immensely.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a game plan, if you don't have a goal, and it's, again, this is normal stuff outside of LA, it's amplified 100% here in LA. If you don't have a goal, this city will tear you apart, and you'll either end up on the street, insane, or, and I told my cousin, it's like, you'll be moving back to Wisconsin in no time. He survived 6 months, and I love him, and if he's watching, I hope he's well. But he didn't have a game plan.
Yeah. It will definitely chew you up and send you back to cheese. Is it Wisconsin cheese?
And you see, Wisconsin is cheese. That's why I gained so much weight when I lived there.
For those of you, we'll go back to Chris. For those of you listening, we are talking about the term "born this way" today on Put Together Conversations. If you like to share this with your friends, please pass it along so they can tag on. If you are watching still and have a question, send it to us. We'll be here for another 15 minutes.
Cool.
Going back to Chris.
So basically there's this give and take, and it would be a dialogue with Chris to explain, but without the use of a dialogue, there's this nature versus nurture debate. It's a philosophical debate. It's happened since, I think it started, it's been a long time, but it was popularized, I think, the early 20th century. But whether my easy response is that we are born an addict. There are some people who are not born an addict who become alcoholics anyway, so that is learned. So there are basically, my response is yes, I agree with you, and no, I do not agree with you, because there are people who are born addicts who don't become addicts because they're aware of it. The gene, there's scientific evidence that the gene is there.
Which could relate to the other gentleman that asked about his mom and the uncles.
Exactly.
It could be a family gene, but she chose not to go into alcoholism.
Yeah. And as far as the learned behavior, absolutely. Because if you're born with the addict gene and you learn, how to drink, or you learn from your parents that drinking is glorious or whatever, or if it's a normal lifestyle, absolutely. Going back to, just to reference my fraternity brother, there were a lot of people in our fraternity who, drinking was a lifestyle, and it's because that's the way they were raised.
Right.
But there were other people who also pursued the same type of a lifestyle who weren't born, or who weren't raised that way, and they learned it from their fraternity brothers. Not to say it's a bad thing. It's just that's the activity.
The culture at that time.
Culture, exactly. And so it's a very complicated response to a very simple comment. And the thing is that, yes, some people are born addicts. Some people are not born addicts. Sometimes it is learned behavior. Sometimes it isn't learned behavior. So there's basically the comment in and of itself is wrong. It's invalid.
Got it. So that's why I basically wrote down the basic 3 steps, and I'm sure there are many more, but the first step to the ever famous onion is peel the layers, which is asking the questions. You have to. I wish that we could give you a yes and no response to everything and just leave it black and white, but life is not black and white. Yeah, there's so much gray area.
Yeah, and again, going back to the Socratic method in my life coaching sessions, is that things that I will never respond to unless I'm being jestful. I will never say yes. I will never say no. And I will never tell someone what to do unless I say, because sometimes for lack of time, I will just stop the session. I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you a teaching, because that will open their mind to what I'm about to tell them, instead of just telling them. Because the thing is that the voice inside someone's head, the voice inside your head, is much louder than my voice. And so when I ask questions, basically the answers are coming from you, almost like Inception. But when I start telling or I start preaching,
thank you.
There you go. Very smart individual there.
By his comment, Adam, you're one of the smartest people I know right now.
All right. the voice inside your head is much louder than the voice that I'm giving you. And so the yeses and the nos and me telling you, like I can tell you right now, it's like, yeah, you're an addict. Do something about it. Or here's what you can do about it. And I just give you this, 10-point system. And while the 10-point system is extremely intelligent and it works, I'm just telling you. I'm not allowing you to come up with the responses on your own, which is what you need to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't need a life coach. So, not you personally, but
no, but I do. We'll have to talk about it after this. You think I'm just warming up to him for nothing? No, there's a method to my. There's a logic to my madness. So for everybody watching, we're talking about the term "born this way," and we're here with life coach Tommy talking about how a session might go, how you might confront this. If you believe that there are things that you were born that way that are stopping you from succeeding personally or professionally, whether it be a relationship, continuing with your family, connecting with your children, or professionally changing careers, advancing your careers, or in most cases, keeping a job sometimes. The first step would be, based on our conversation, is the question, we keep bringing up the onion, peeling those layers and asking the questions and being open to answering the questions, right? Because if that could be, if you're not honest, if I'm not honest with you with the questions you're asking me, I'm really not doing you any disservice. It's just hurting me, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with therapy. It's like the therapist can only, with detective work, with therapy, even sales, for example, they can only help you as much as you allow. Right. If you're holding back, and I can usually sense that, and I will stop a session, and then we'll talk about that. We'll talk about, well, you hired me. I can't help you, unless you are going to be a part of this, and I've fortunately never had to experience that, but I'm on the ready. I know what that.
Talk to me!
Why are we here?
And then once we start asking those questions, or as a client, once I start answering the questions truthfully, honestly, to the best of my ability, Ruth is actually my a sweet dear friend of mine, nice. And she's also my Reiki teacher. So there's also the spiritual component of it all sometimes too.
Every year should be about integrity and creating union, but glad that that's your focus, Ruth.
And we'll see you in May, Ruth. She's in Hawaii, so we'll be in Hawaii.
Very cool.
So once you get through the question part, and this could start, not everybody can afford a life coach, and not everybody has a life coach available in their areas, but asking yourself some of these questions and being honest will lead to number 2, which is the discovery. You'll start to discover things that you were maybe keeping from yourself too. I know for me, going through rehab and discovering that aspect of my life, the addiction part of my life, asking the right questions led me to times in my life where I've been mentally, physically, or psychologically abused that led to me to drinking even more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into an equation that I learned a while ago that's been really helpful to my clients, and I hope you put in the comments and when you list out all this stuff, this equation, because it's a nice reference to what you talked about, is that while we get caught up in this "I'm born this way" or "this is just the way I am" mentality, there's this equation that I learned a long time ago. It's basically E plus R equals O, and basically what that stands for is event plus response or reaction equals outcome. And the reason why that's such an important equation is that there are so many things that happen to us externally. Like right now we're hearing a siren, and that's going to affect the audio. but we're not going to get pissed off about it. We're not going to crap, bad timing. We're just going to continue and not let it affect us. That was a perfect timing example, but there are so many things that happen. There's a plethora of things that happen to us externally that we don't have control over. Somebody treats us a certain way, or somebody cuts us off in the freeway. All that stuff has nothing to do with us personally, but that's their choice to act on us. Our response to that event will affect whether or not it's a productive outcome or a satisfying outcome, because we control how we can respond to that event. So again, this is a really deep example, but to give the example of the abuse you endured, that's an event that occurred to you, and your response was to go to alcohol.
Right.
And what outcome did that create?
Well, I didn't know we were going to go into this deep. I should be careful what I talk about. Yes, Adam, send your question over.
Absolutely.
So yes, the abuse that I received as a child or as a teen, plus the drinking and drugs, created job losses, relationship losses, home losses. I was homeless for a while. All these things that caused me to feel even more miserable, blaming myself and continue the cycle of drinking until rehab, when somebody stopped me and said, those were not your fault. And then that changed, which is interesting you've been that, because in rehab is where I learned the term of don't react, act, which was basically sleep on it, think about it a little bit, and then act upon that, versus reacting to everything, which is why I bring anger management, because I was very angry for some time, blaming everybody that harmed me for what happened, but then taking it out on other people. You might not think it's seeing me now, but there were times when I was very abusive with my partners at the time. But that's in rehab is where I learned, is like, instead of reacting, act on it, think about it, sleep on it, and then come back, put some action into it.
Did it change the outcome?
Oh, well, definitely. I mean, I'm here in LA. I moved here 10 years ago. I have a pretty good career in acting now and social media. I have a wonderful partner. I am Latino, so there is that hot-headedness still in there. But instead of reacting towards what he says and not taking it personal, he is not a reflection of the people who hurt me before. He is his own person, and I have to act on that, not react the way I would before.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right. So
Adam's question, and there's nothing that anyone could say where I would take anything the wrong way. Absolutely. So thank you for your question. How do you establish credibility? And congratulations for hiring a life coach. I hope it really brings positivity, the positivity that you seek to your life. How do you establish credibility with your clients as a life coach? It's an interesting question. Let's see here. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of terrible at life in some ways, and I'm sincerely seeking guidance with some things. Okay. We're all terrible. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'll even share with my clients like what I've had, weaknesses that I've had, choices that I made, and how I dealt with it. Right. If it's helpful to them. So nobody's perfect, Adam. Not even us.
No, so. I pretend to be, but no.
But credibility is an interesting thing, and to make it personal and specific to me, is there's a lot to do with confidence, the confidence that you have in yourself when you come to a session. But in order to get clients, there is a credibility thing that you have to have. And personally, what I do is I lend myself online. I have a website, lifecoachtommy.com, and in my blogs, there's all sorts of content. And my hope is that a visitor of the website who's seeking life coaching will read those blogs, or look at the vlogs, because I also record video, and take something from it and see that I'm a credible source. And if they disagree with what I'm doing or what I'm saying, or if that in any way decreases my credibility, that's fine. But that's how I try to establish my credibility, is lending myself, putting myself out there online, offering, like frequently asked questions. That's pretty much what my blogs focus on, is what I focus on, what our focus will be, and a lot of the questions that I get. I hope that answered your question. And
just to clarify, I am not a life coach. I've played one on TV, not just it. I'm a spiritual advisor, so I actually work. Ruth Kramer, who is on just now, she is my Reiki teacher, so I work energy. I do readings. I do Reiki sessions with people. So I work more with energy, but I do have clients that come to me with issues that they're trying to clear out. So through readings and energy work, we're able to clear some of the stuff. And I'm just like you. I don't want to keep reading for people over a long time. It's like you come to me because you want spiritual guidance in clearing up issues. So we I guess we do something similar, just on different aspects of the spectrum.
Sure.
Which doesn't mean that we couldn't work together and have clients that both want spiritual and mental alignment per se.
Yeah.
So we both help people take the training wheels off the bike and make them go. And then just to answer life, my favorite thing to tell people is life sucks. You just gotta have a bigger straw and just beat life to it, and definitely getting help, whichever direction you want to go in, is the way to do it.
Well, I want to actually express a disagreement I have with Daniel. He said life sucks. I disagree. Life is challenging. There are many challenges in this life, and we have to encounter those challenges.
Well, I meant it in a joke thing.
But also, the whole Adam says the whole concept is pretty new to me, and I'm just hoping I learned something. Just need new perspective, and I hope it brings new perspective to your life. The biggest thing that I tell my clients, and I tell people online about life coaching, is it's a lot like coaching in sports, like basketball or soccer. A soccer team or a baseball team can't do it alone. They can't function alone. And so they have a coach yelling at them and basically rooting them on. That's what a life coach does. Not only does it elevate you, it also gives you an objective viewpoint, because personally, we like to give ourselves a lot of excuses, like that we're born this way.
Right.
And what happens is a good life coach will call you out and say, really? You really think you're born this way? So that's it. We're done. And so that's what a good life coach will do.
Pay me now. I'll go home.
It'll offer you new perspective, but also give you an objective viewpoint. But again, Adam, with your life coach, just be open and honest. I love it when my clients are open and honest, and they always find it surprising of how open and honest they can be with me because I don't pass judgment at all. Right. I've had people talk from their sex life to their addiction to pornography, and it's like, okay, then let's work on that. That's an issue for you. Let's work on it. And I don't pass any judgment. So I hope that is helpful for you.
Ruth actually sent Adam a message.
Oh, nice. Of self-love by saying he's getting good at living in his own life.
So in case you didn't see it, Adam, I hope you do get to read it. It says, Adam needs to change his language of self-love by saying he's getting good at living his own life.
Yeah, that goes into neurolinguistics that we talked about.
Yes. So if you, neurolinguistic, we actually talked about that, Ruth. Thank you. Yeah. I love Ruth. If you want to learn more about neurolinguistics, our first conversation episode is on that. So you can go to the YouTube page, Daniel G. Garza, and you can find it there. And I will repost it on my personal page and the Put It Together page on Facebook, so you can find it. Are we almost at the hour?
Almost.
It went quick.
I know, just like that.
Again, for those of you joining us, this is Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza, with life coach Tommy. I want to let you know that, oh, great. We're connecting people. People found each other that went to school together. People are connecting. This is awesome. It's the page that keeps on giving. We're the show. We're like the white and Mexican Oprah here. But yes, I forgot where I was going for trying to be funny.
Well, I was going to say, I was just going to kind of plug myself.
Yes, please.
LifeCoachTommy.com is where you can find me. I also have a Yelp page you can go to, but message me questions outside of the page. I'm super responsive. I also have a video blog, a vlog, What is Tommy? ? It's not just life coaching. There's also a lot of other stuff on there.
Cool. And for those of you that have enjoyed this hour, oh, thank you, Ruth. I love you.
Nice.
It's journaling. Yeah, that's a different way. And so if you've enjoyed Mr. Tommy Lee Kirby, make sure you go and check out our first episode of Conversations, which was neurolinguistics. You can find that again on my YouTube page at Daniel G. Garza. You can also hear his story on Put It Together podcast. So I will repost that so you guys can hear his story. And I think when it comes to anything with life, having lived and having had those various experiences, and you'll hear his story, kind of gives you that edge up on. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to credibility. Is that I lend myself. I'm completely honest with anyone. Yeah. If it's helpful to the session and people learn, it's like I've heard so many times, and it's always surprising. They say, if this guy can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always try to lend myself. And Adam, keep journaling. I have a whole thing on that, on journaling, about how to get the thoughts out of your mind.
Which we could make it the next episode.
Talk about journaling next time.
Putting together conversations. We'll continue with more episodes. We have more people lined up to show up, to come and sit with me and talk about their expertise. Of course, I'll have Tommy back on the show. For those of you that don't know, we know each other back from Houston, so we've actually known each other for about 12 years now. Yeah. So it was really great to reconnect, and I'm learning as much as you guys are learning. There's no that we do before the show. Thank you.
Dynamic duo.
We got that a lot. I just need to grow a beard at some point, maybe. Yes, please. We will announce it, and just keep an eye on the page for the posters. We have more people, experts in their field, wanting to come on. We will have Kai Kalama, who is a musician in Laguna Beach, and his experiences in live competitions. He was on American Idol several seasons ago, and he's going to talk about his life. We have, thank you, Batman and Robin.
Wait, which one's Batman? Which one's Robin?
You're Batman. You're Batman. And then we're going to have Brandon Gotzi, who I just interviewed, who talks about Crohn's disease and writing his book to help other people. He'll come on. So if you are an expert in your field and you are in the Southern California area and would like to sit here and share, get in touch with me. Send me a message to any of the social media pages, or you can email me at danielggarza@hotmail.com. That's DanielGgarza@hotmail.com, and let me know what your expertise is, and you can be here.
Adam says don't grow a beard.
No, another thing. I know, I look much younger without a beard. Any last thoughts or any last messages and your contact again?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, to just wrap everything up, is just be aware of how we're communicating with ourselves. Because I say this multiple times in every single session and usually on every blog, is that if you don't have a positive relationship with yourself, if you don't love yourself, it is virtually impossible for you to have a positive relationship with anyone else. So it all starts with self. It's
the ever ripple effect. Yes, we will do some from when I'm there. Ruth will definitely have to be on my show. We're going to be in Hawaii for a week. Fingers crossed, everything goes well. So we'll definitely, Ruth, you are in line to be on one of my conversations. So the basic things, just to close up the show, 3 steps that I got out of the conversation was, number 1, ask yourself the questions, or let your therapist, your life coach, your spiritual coach, let us ask you the questions that we need in order to help you. And you have to be honest and forthcoming. Otherwise, the procedure will not work. You're already blocking it from working for you. Second, be open and available to discovery. Learn new things about you, or rediscover things about you that maybe you hid for a while for a special reason, and allow us to give you a safe space to discover those things and be okay with them. And then third, shoot for the outcome. Be positive that there's going to be an outcome of this. It may not always go in the direction we want, but there will be an outcome. And as long as you're honest with your questions and honest with your answers, and you're open to discovery, there will be an outcome. And that's what a life coach or a spiritual advisor are here for. If you are interested in spiritual advising, reach out to me and we will connect for a reading or an energy session, and we can do that. So for now, I am your host, Daniel G. Garza.
Life coach Tommy.
For any more comments or questions, please follow us on YouTube. Full and Supermoon, big day for intentions. Tommy is cool, by the way.
He thinks I'm cool.
He is cool. That's why he's on the show. Only cool people allowed here.
If you're not cool, you can't be on the show.
For now, I want to thank you.
With 11.
At 11. Thank you, Matt. Oh, Mr. Brown. He's a podcaster. He was a podcaster on the network.
Nice.
I miss you. We need to talk. So for now, I want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a Lilmesican production. And this is Put It Together Conversations. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.